Relay, we're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this per tweet from Michael Benson. Eddie Hearn has declared that he expects to make Alicia Baumgardner versus Hyun-Mi Choi for the undisputed WBA, WBC, IBF, and WBO super featherweight world titles in January or February. January or February. That's when Anthony Joshua is supposed to be returning to action. Is Eddie Hearn courting the idea that Alicia might box on his undercard? I'll say this much. The sooner she boxes, the sooner she returns to action, the better. Careers die on the vine.
Fighters get forgotten about when they're away from the ring too long. It happens all the time. I maintained for a long time that as soon as the boxing community at large,
as soon as they lay eyes on Alicia, they're going to like what they see. All she needs is the opportunity. All she needs is the platform.
Time has proven me right, as it often does.
Addressing all the boo birds waiting for Alicia to find time in her very busy schedule to give Mikaela Mayer a rematch, well, that's in the back of the queue. I mean, why wouldn't it be? Alicia Baumgardner's not doing anything right now that Mikaela Mayer wouldn't be doing if the shoe were on the other foot. And all the outcry, all that outrage, to see a second fight, to see an immediate rematch. Most of those people are just people that are angry they picked the wrong pony in the show.
Hey! What? Tough break.
What do you want she should do?
What?
Put off the undisputed title fight to oblige Mikaela Mayer? Is that what Mikaela Mayer would do in that situation? And all these people asking for a rematch, those are just people that are angry they got it wrong.
You win some, you lose some.
You lost. You got it wrong.
Furthermore, if Mikaela Mayer wants a rematch so bad, you know what I'm wondering? If Alicia Baumgardner actually offered her a second fight, actually offered her a rematch on the Matchroom and DAZN side of things, would Mikaela Mayer actually go over there to get it? Because Mikaela ain't the A side anymore.
That is a legitimate question in reference to a second fight because Mikaela seems to want one, but if one was offered to her on the Matchroom and DAZN side of things, would she do what she has to do to get it? Because you don't call the shots no more.
I don't dislike Mikaela Mayer. I've got nothing against her, but I'm just calling a spade a spade.
The best thing for her to do right now is to move on. Find some other title to fight for at some other weight class because you're not getting that rematch no time soon. It just doesn't look like it.
And I've offered up some suggestions in previous videos. Maybe she can take on Delphine Persoon, rather the winner of Persoon versus Ikram Kerwat, which I anticipate is going to be Delphine Persoon. If she takes on Delphine,
she will have the opportunity right then and there to not only be a part of a titillating match, an excellent fight, but she'll also have the opportunity to become Alicia's mandatory challenger by way of the WBC.
Maybe they need to get working on that. Maybe that's what they should do.
Because Alicia's on the cusp of becoming her division's undisputed champion. That takes priority over everything else. And if she wins that fight with Hyun-Mi Choi, and I think she can, I think she will, a potential Katie Taylor fight becomes a possibility, provided Katie Taylor makes it past Carl Hall this weekend. The undisputed super featherweight champion versus the undisputed lightweight champion. Or what about the undisputed super featherweight champion versus the undisputed featherweight champion?
Amanda Serrano.
She, like Alicia Baumgardner, is just one belt away from becoming the featherweight division's undisputed champion. And if she does that at some point in the first quarter of next year, you might be able to do a Baumgardner versus Serrano fight sometime in the summer or fall months. The world really is Alicia's oyster right now.
A fight with Amanda Serrano or a fight with Katie Taylor, both of those fights are bigger money fights than having a rematch with Mikaela Mayer. Not saying that a rematch with Mikaela isn't a big fight. It is, but those fights are more important.
Top of the totem pole, that's the way it is.
I'm just glad that Eddie Hearn and the people over there at Matchroom have already gotten to working on the potential undisputed super featherweight title fight, because for a long time I wondered if there still even was a relationship between Hyun-Mi Choi and Matchroom.
It appears that relationship still exists. That relationship is still intact, and the undisputed super featherweight title fight is underway. And just in keeping with the theme of all things Matchroom, the continued fallout of Conor Benn's positive VADA test, the cancellation of the Eubank Jr. fight, and what's set to happen with Conor and his career in the future, he has willfully relinquished his boxing license. We talked about that in my previous video, and
the whole thing is a mess.
With Conor Benn willfully relinquishing his boxing license by way of the BBBofC, it looks like he won't be boxing in the United Kingdom. Looks like he won't be boxing there for a long time, but that doesn't necessarily mean he won't be boxing. While he attempts to clear his name and fight this thing, maybe he fights in America.
You have to remember that Matchroom is more or less a global outfit that stages shows in several different territories around the world. The UK is just one among them.
Eddie Hearn has told reporters that they believe Conor Benn's positive drug test is a case of contamination. The levels in this amount, surrounded by the other testing that took place, would lead to suggestion of contamination of some kind in his test.
We talked about all of that in my previous video. The question is, how long will Conor Benn allow this fiasco to sidetrack his career?
And what's he going to do? What's going to happen? He's going to be inactive the whole time he's trying to clear his name with the BBBofC, or will he so choose to fight abroad in the coming year? Because Matchroom can make that happen. They can make it happen here in America. They can make it happen in Australia. They can make it happen in Spain, in Italy,
In Abu Dhabi.
They can make it happen. It's entirely possible that while Conor Benn attempts to clear his name in the United Kingdom, he so chooses to fight abroad where he still can fight and still can continue his career under the auspices of a different commission.
Can't let this thing swallow him whole. He can't let this thing swallow him up forever.
Given that Conor Benn was supposed to be venturing north of welterweight all the way up there to middleweight for the Chris Eubank Jr. fight, it's conceivable that he returns as a junior middleweight.
Hey, didn't that Australian guy,
Dennis Hogan just beat the United Kingdom's own Sam Eggington down there at 154 pounds. Dennis Hogan would be an ideal keep-busy fight for young Conroy.
Connor.
John Connor's role as the centerpiece in more recent incarnations of the Terminator series has been devalued over time.
The hell are you talking about?
The point is that just because things aren't working out in the United Kingdom for young Conroy, that doesn't mean he can't box someplace else. He still can, and he can still amass professional experience and marquee value to some degree in other markets. That is the opportunity before him.
I will admit that Eddie Hearn's more domestic competitors, Ben Shalom and Frank Warren, they may be breathing a sigh of relief that his young ward, the heir apparent, what could have become and could still become the face of British boxing.
They might be breathing a sigh of relief that they don't got to worry about that guy right now. They don't have to compete with Conor Benn or any of his shows in the immediate future.
But you know, for Conor, this might be a blessing in disguise. It gives him the unique opportunity to get out of his comfort zone and effectively expand his horizons as a boxer.
You know, very recently, Dillian Veit relocated to the West Coast here in America, and he's training under Buddy McGirt now. We've yet to see the fruits of their labor, but that's more or less what I've got in mind. Conor Benn fighting abroad
Could inadvertently end up making him a better fighter.
Don't let this whole performance-enhancing drug fiasco get you down. Do you know how many boxers in this sport, prominent ones, well-known boxers, have tested positive for banned substances? Do you really think that all these people that are talking about this are talking about it because of you? These are just people that already had an axe to grind with your promoter.
I'm telling you, there are people out there that are working hard to make this about Eddie Hearn more than it's about Conor Benn.
And just in keeping with the theme of all things Matchroom, Matchroom's promising young super flyweight champion, Bam Rodriguez, has vacated his WBC super flyweight world title and is moving down to flyweight.
We've known that this is what his team has wanted for him for some time, and given what he's already displayed as a super flyweight, I think he'll be just fine down there at flyweight.
We've been hearing this for weeks, that his team wants him to move down to 112 pounds. And with him vacating the green belt, with him vacating the WBC title, that WBC title might pop up in the upcoming Chocolatito versus Juan Estrada trilogy, their third fight, set to go down later on this year before this year is out.
If it does, the winner of the fight, whoever it is, whether it's Gallo or Choco, the winner of the fight will have a credible enough argument to be reintegrated into the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list.
This news of Bam Rodriguez vacating his green belt, vacating the WBC title, it comes to us at a time when his brother, Joshua Franco, newly crowned WBA super flyweight champion, is set to be taking on.
Remember, Gallo Estrada was the reigning WBA champion up until recently. He was under orders to face Bam's brother, Joshua Franco. But Juan vacated the WBA title, and Joshua Franco was elevated to full champion.
And now as a full champion, there seems to be a deal in place for the newly crowned WBA champion champion to take on long-reigning WBO super flyweight champion of Japan, Kazuto Ioka.
They're supposed to be having a unification match of champions. This is why I appreciate the lighter weights so much. Flyweight and super flyweight. There aren't as many politics as what you find at welterweight, middleweight, the glamour weight.
If glamour means a bunch of prima donnas that don't want to fight nobody, if glamour means a bunch of politics and a bunch of prima donnas, if that's what glamour means.
This is why I'm not too down over the collapse of Crawford versus Spence. There are still other fights happening, good fights, very good fights, and unification matches. They are happening at other weights, devoid of the politics and prima donnas you find at welter, at middle.
With Joshua Franco set to take on Kazuto Ioka in a unification match, the winner of that fight may end up fighting the winner of Chocolatito versus Estrada 3. It's only right. And the winner of Chocolatito versus Estrada 3, I don't want to be presumptuous, I don't want to jump to conclusions, but it's conceivable that the WBC title leading up to that fight might be added to it.
And if it is, you know what might happen? The winner of that fight might go into a fight with the winner of Kazuto Ioka versus Joshua Franco. A 3-belt unification match.
As far as Fernando Martinez, this division's IBF champion who's coming off his second consecutive win over former champion Jerwin Ancajas, he's the odd man out. He's on the PBC side of things. Who knows if he'll get to hit the dance floor and join the party? He's isolated over there. There are no other super flyweights on PBC Island for him to fight. And unless he changes his decorum, he will continue to be the odd man out.
That's the way that breaks down. Back to Bam Rodriguez, who's set to be moving down from super flyweight down to flyweight.
He's set to be moving down to 112 pounds, and he seems to have his eyes on the WBO title. The WBO title that Junto Nakatani is set to vacate very soon, as Junto Nakatani, that unbeaten champion, is set to be moving up to super flyweight at a time when Bam Rodriguez is moving down.
Junto is set to make his super flyweight debut early next month on the 1st against Francisco Rodriguez of Mexico, over there in Japan at the Saitama Arena.
He's expected to vacate the WBO title, and Jesse Rodriguez, Bam Rodriguez, he means to pick it up. He means to pick it up, but not just pick it up, unify titles with the other champions down there. And you know who's down there? Sonny Edwards is down there.
Sonny Edwards, the flyweight division's unbeaten, current reigning IBF champion, who's set to be returning to action very soon against his mandatory challenger,
Felix Alvarado. After the Cesar Martinez fight's collapse, Sonny Edwards, he didn't waste any time. He's got to satisfy his obligations as a champion, and that's what he's set to be doing.
Next month on the 11th.
There's a lot of movement between 112 and 115 pounds, and for what it's worth, I like it.
I was wondering how long it'd take before we start seeing unification matches at or around these weights, because there are any number of good fights to make.
And this is just the beginning. And finally, men's heavyweight news. On the heels of his big win over Joseph Parker, Joyce says, "I'd love to fight Deontay Wilder in Las Vegas." And you get the sense that Joyce would like to do the fight here in America, here in Las Vegas, because he's expecting big Vegas money. He said, "That's a big fight. I'd love to fight him in Las Vegas."
Somebody ought to tell him that Deontay Wilder just tanked at the box office.
American fans know who I am. I train in Vegas. It'd be an interesting fight to make down the line. He's obviously got phenomenal power. It's those kinds of fantasy matchups that get everyone talking. It's a good feeling. I already knew my abilities, like I always knew I would get there. And now I'm kind of here, so there's plenty of great fights for me to be a part of.
Listen, at a time when Deontay Wilder's notoriety seems to be nosediving, while at the same time piracy is at an all-time high, doing the fight in Vegas, doing it here in America, don't guarantee the big bucks.
Do I think Wilder versus Joyce does better at the box office here in America? Do I think it does better than a Hellenius fight? Yeah, but not much better.
Gotta understand, the box office numbers for the Hellenius fight are extraordinarily low.
I'm obviously in a good position as the WBO interim champion, Joyce said. That means I could be getting elevated to full champion very soon if Usyk doesn't want to fight me when they call their mandatories. I don't know. There's so many good fights out there. If anyone wants to fight me, give me a call. I'm ready.
Wilder's not gonna call him.
He's not. In all likelihood, Deontay Wilder's next fight will come against former unified champion Andy Ruiz, who posted this image by way of his social media, hinting at an upcoming Wilder showdown. And let's be honest, that's what we're all expecting. In all likelihood, That's what we're gonna get next.
I wonder what that's going to do at the box office. Andy Ruiz versus Luis Ortiz sold a reported 65,000 pay-per-view buys. Deontay Wilder versus Robert Helenius, that sold between 75 and 77,000. Not much better. Those numbers are all in the same neighborhood. I was expecting a better turnout. I was expecting better box office numbers for Wilder's ring return, and the fact that the numbers are so low. I don't know, man. We'll see what happens. It's possible that between Shelley Finkel and Frank Warren, because you know they're good friends, it's possible they could do a fight like that between them.
That's how the Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury fight came into fruition. The network relationship between Frank Warren and Shelley Finkel, Deontay Wilder's longtime manager. It's not that a Joe Joyce fight can't happen, it's that it's not about to happen, not next.
We'll see which British heavyweight Deontay Wilder does end up fighting, if he ends up fighting any British heavyweights at all, aside from the one who kicked his ass 2 times.
Don't forget that there are still people clutching their rosemary beets, holding out hope that they can get a Joshua versus Wilder showdown, that we can finally get to see that fight. And even though both of those guys have suffered multiple losses, they're not champions anymore, there are still people holding out hope that that fight happens. And being honest, the working relationship between the Wilder people and the Joshua people...
What working relationship?
That's the point. Those two teams, they just don't mesh. I mean, granted that you get a lot more, and I mean a lot more money fighting Anthony Joshua than you would fighting Joe Joyce. That was always the case. That was always the situation. And in spite of that, they didn't get the fight over the line.
You still want to sit around playing the blame game like it's 2018, be my guest. But in any event, that was always the case. Anthony Joshua was always the big money fight at heavyweight. In spite of that,
the fight didn't happen, so I don't know. I don't want to look too far ahead because it gets murky when I do. For the immediate future, for what the immediate future holds in the coming year, it looks like what we're going to get is Wilder versus Ruiz, and I don't think that comes as a surprise to anyone.
For how many weeks and how many months have I been telling you that if Wilder beats Helenius, he's gonna fight Andy Ruiz afterwards?
Hell, even before that, before the Helenius fight was officially announced, I told you that that guy didn't fight on Deontay Wilder's undercard by accident. In all likelihood, his ring return would be against Robert Helenius.
These guys are too predictable. So before you start worrying about a Joe Joyce fight or a Joshua fight,
let's see how long it takes them to deliver this fight. This fight of former champions between Deontay Wilder and Andy Ruiz, because that's what's next.